Grace had been cleaning rich people's houses for over 20 years. She knew how to fold towels in that fancy hotel style. She knew which expensive cleaning products to use on marble floors. And most importantly, she knew when to stay quiet and invisible. The Thompson family apartment in Manhattan was her biggest job yet. 35th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city, and more bathrooms than most people had rooms in their entire house. She'd been working there for 3 years now, arriving every morning at 7 and leaving by 4 Monday through Friday. The money was good. Better than good, actually. It had to be. Her daughter Lisa was in her second year at college upstate, studying to become a nurse. Every paycheck Grace earned went toward tuition, books, and making sure her baby girl didn't have to work 3 jobs like Grace did when she was that age. Grace was 42, but felt older some days. Her knees ached from all the scrubbing. Her hands were rough despite the lotion she applied every night. But she never complained. This job was a blessing even on the hard days. And lately there had been a lot of hard days. Mr. Thompson was hardly ever home. He ran some big tech company that Grace didn't fully understand. Something about software and computers. He was polite enough on the rare occasions their paths crossed. Usually just a quick nod or a thank you. "Grace," as he rushed out the door with his phone pressed to his ear. Mrs. Thompson was a different story entirely. Victoria Thompson was 35, blonde and beautiful in that way that required a lot of money to maintain. Personal trainers, fancy salons, designer everything. She didn't work, unless you counted attending charity lunches and planning parties as work. She spent most of her time shopping, getting treatments at expensive spas, or meeting friends for overpriced cocktails. Grace had learned to read Mrs. Thompson's moods. Some days she was fine, barely acknowledging Grace's existence. Those were the good days. Other days she was critical about everything. The pillows weren't fluffed right. There was a tiny smudge on a mirror. The towels weren't warm enough, but lately, Mrs. Thompson had been drinking more. Grace would find empty wine bottles in the bedroom trash, champagne glasses left on the bathroom counter at odd hours. And when Mrs. Thompson drank, she got mean. It started small. Sharp comments about Grace being slow, complaints that were impossible to fix. Then it escalated to yelling over tiny things that didn't matter. Grace bore it all silently. She needed this job. Lisa needed her to keep this job. That Tuesday started like any other. Grace let herself in with her key, changed into her work clothes in the small staff bathroom, and began her routine. Dusting, vacuuming, making sure everything was perfect. Mr. Thompson had already left for work. Mrs. Thompson was still in bed, which meant Grace had a few peaceful hours to get most of the work done. Around 2 in the afternoon, Grace heard the elevator ding. Mrs. Thompson was back from wherever she'd been. Grace could hear it immediately in the way she walked, the way her heels clicked unevenly on the marble floor. She'd been drinking. Grace was in the kitchen, hand-washing the crystal wine glasses that were too delicate for the dishwasher. She heard Mrs. Thompson's voice getting louder, talking on the phone to someone. The conversation didn't sound happy. The call ended abruptly, and moments later Mrs. Thompson stormed into the kitchen. Her makeup was smeared slightly, and Grace could smell the wine from 3 feet away. "Grace," Mrs. Thompson said, her voice sharp. "Did you wash these glasses?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm finishing them now." Mrs. Thompson grabbed one from the drying rack and held it up to the light, squinting. "There's a spot. Right here. Do you see it?" Grace looked. If there was a spot, it was microscopic. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson, I can wash it again." "You can wash it again?" Mrs. Thompson's voice rose. "That's what you always say. I'm sorry, I can do it again. Do you know how much these glasses cost, do you?" "No, ma'am. More than you make in a month. And you can't even wash them properly." Grace felt her chest tighten, but she kept her voice calm. "I'll be more careful. Let me rewash all of them right now." "No." Mrs. Thompson set the glass down hard on the counter. "Too hard. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of your excuses. I'm tired of having to check everything you do because you're too stupid to do it right the first time." The words stung, but Grace had heard worse over the years. She took a breath, about to apologize again, when Mrs. Thompson suddenly grabbed the glass and threw it. Not at the sink. At Grace, the crystal hit Grace's left arm and shattered. She felt the sharp pain immediately, then looked down to see blood running down her forearm. A piece of glass had sliced through her sleeve and into her skin. "Mrs. Thompson," Grace said, her voice shaking now, "you cut me. "Oh, don't be dramatic," Mrs. Thompson snapped. "It's barely a scratch. And if you'd done your job right, I wouldn't have gotten so upset." Grace pressed her hand against the cut, trying to stop the bleeding. Her heart was pounding. In 20 years of this work, no one had ever thrown something at her. No one had ever actually hurt her. "I need to bandage this," Grace said quietly, starting to move toward her bag where she kept a first aid kit. But Mrs. Thompson stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "We're not done here. You don't get to walk away from me when I'm talking to you." "Please, Mrs. Thompson, I'm bleeding." "And whose fault is that?" Mrs. Thompson's eyes were wild now, unfocused. She raised her hand, palm open, pulling it back like she was about to slap Grace across the face. Something in Grace broke. 20 years of swallowing her pride. 20 years of being invisible. 20 years of accepting disrespect because she needed the money. Her daughter's face flashed in her mind. All those sacrifices. All that silence. And for what? To be cut and then hit like she was nothing? Grace's hand moved before her brain could stop it. A sharp, quick slap across Mrs. Thompson's face. The sound echoed through the huge kitchen like a gunshot. Mrs. Thompson stumbled backward, her hand flying to her cheek. Her mouth fell open in complete shock. For a moment, neither woman moved. Neither woman breathed. Grace's entire body went cold. What had she just done? She'd just hit her employer. She'd just slapped a billionaire's wife. Her mind raced through the consequences. She'd be fired. Probably arrested. Mrs. Thompson had powerful friends, expensive lawyers. Grace would never work in this city again. How would she pay for Lisa's school? How would she explain this to her daughter? Mrs. Thompson's voice was barely a whisper. "You just hit me." Grace opened her mouth, but no words came out. What could she possibly say? Blood was still dripping down her arm onto the white marble floor. Her hand was still raised slightly, as if frozen in time. The apartment was completely silent except for both women's breathing. Heavy, panicked, shocked. Then they heard it. The elevator ding. Someone was coming up. Mrs. Thompson's eyes widened. Grace felt her stomach drop. If it was building security, she was done. If it was one of Mrs. Thompson's friends, it was over. The elevator doors opened. Footsteps in the hallway. A man's voice called out, "Victoria? Are you home?" It was Mr. Thompson. He was home early. Grace had never been so terrified and so confused at the same time. What was he doing here in the middle of the afternoon? He appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in his business suit, briefcase in hand. His eyes moved from his wife's red cheek to Grace's bleeding arm, to the broken glass scattered across the floor. The silence stretched on forever. Grace couldn't even imagine what happened next. Mr. Thompson stood perfectly still in the doorway. His eyes moved slowly across the scene. The broken glass. The blood on the floor. Grace holding her arm. His wife's hand pressed against her red cheek. Nobody spoke. Grace felt like she couldn't breathe. This was it. Her life was over. She'd be arrested, lose everything. All because of one moment of defending herself. Mrs. Thompson recovered first. Her shock transformed into performance. Her voice became shaky, tearful. "Thank God you're home. She attacked me. I was just asking her about the cleaning and she went crazy. She threw a glass and then she hit me." Grace's heart sank even further. Of course, Mrs. Thompson was going to lie. Rich people always protected themselves. Who would believe a housekeeper over a billionaire's wife? But Mr. Thompson didn't rush to his wife's side. He didn't comfort her. He didn't even look at her. His eyes were fixed on Grace's arm where blood was still seeping through her fingers. "Grace," he said quietly, "what happened to your arm?" The question surprised her. Grace swallowed hard. She could lie. She could say it was an accident. She could try to save her job, keep the peace. That's what she'd always done before. Stay quiet, stay invisible. But looking at her own blood dripping onto the expensive floor, something shifted inside her. She was tired. So tired of being small. "Mrs. Thompson threw a glass at me, sir." Grace's voice trembled but stayed steady. "It hit my arm and cut me. When she tried to hit me again, I stopped her. I defended myself. I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, I'll pack my things and leave." Mrs. Thompson's face went pale, then red. "She's lying!" "You're not going to believe this woman over your own wife, are you?" Mr. Thompson finally looked at his wife. His expression was unreadable. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times, his jaw tight. "Last month," he said slowly. I had a security system installed throughout the apartment, hidden cameras in every room, except the bedrooms and bathrooms. The company sent me alerts when there's unusual activity. Grace felt confused. Cameras? She'd never noticed any cameras. Mrs. Thompson's confidence wavered. What are you talking about? Why would you put cameras in our home without telling me? Because money has been disappearing from accounts, Mr. Thompson said. His voice was cold now. Because I've been getting strange calls from my business partner about confidential information somehow leaking. Because things haven't added up for months, Victoria. He turned his phone screen toward both of them. Grace could see the video playing. It showed the kitchen from a corner angle she'd never noticed. The footage was clear. Crystal clear. There was Mrs. Thompson grabbing the glass, throwing it at Grace, Grace backing away, Mrs. Thompson advancing, hand raised. Grace's defensive slap. Everything. The truth recorded. But Mr. Thompson kept the video playing. He scrolled backward to earlier in the footage. Grace saw herself working alone in the kitchen that morning. Then Mrs. Thompson appeared with a man Grace had never seen before. They looked around carefully. Then Mrs. Thompson led him down the hallway toward Mr. Thompson's private office. Mr. Thompson's finger paused the video. Recognize him, Victoria? His wife said nothing. Her face had gone completely white. That's my business partner, Richard, Mr. Thompson continued. The same Richard who's been trying to convince our board to sell the company for months. The same Richard who somehow knew details about our new product launch before we announced it internally. Grace stood frozen, still holding her bleeding arm. This had nothing to do with her anymore. She was watching a marriage explode in real time. Mrs. Thompson's composure cracked. It's not what you think. Really? Mr. Thompson's voice was sharp. Because what I think is that you've been having an affair with my business partner. What I think is that you've been feeding him confidential information. What I think is that you've been stealing from me. And what I know, because I just watched it, is that you assaulted my employee and then tried to lie about it. The words hung in the air like smoke. Grace wanted to disappear, to be anywhere but in this kitchen witnessing this moment. Mrs. Thompson's eyes filled with tears, but they looked angry rather than sad. You're never here. You care more about your stupid company than your own wife. Richard actually pays attention to me. So you decided to destroy everything? Mr. Thompson's voice rose. Our marriage? My company. You could have just asked for a divorce, Victoria. Instead, you chose betrayal and theft. Grace cleared her throat softly. Both of them looked at her as if they'd forgotten she was there. Mr. Thompson, I should go, Grace said quietly. You both need to talk. I'll come back tomorrow for my things. No. Mr. Thompson held up his hand. Grace, please sit down. You're still bleeding. Let me get the first aid kit. I have one in my bag, sir. I'm fine. You're not fine. My wife threw a glass at you and cut you. He looked back at Mrs. Thompson with disgust. Grace, please sit. This concerns you too. Grace didn't want to sit. She wanted to run out of this apartment and never come back. But Mr. Thompson was already getting a chair, pulling out the first aid kit from a high cabinet. His hands were gentle as he cleaned the cut on her arm. It wasn't as deep as she'd feared, but it would definitely scar. Mrs. Thompson watched with cold eyes. Oh, how touching. The billionaire playing doctor for the help. Mr. Thompson ignored her. He carefully bandaged Grace's arm, then sat down across from her. Mrs. Thompson remained standing, arms crossed. Grace, I owe you an apology, Mr. Thompson said. I've known Victoria has been difficult with the staff. I've heard things, seen things. I should have said something sooner. I should have protected you. Grace didn't know what to say. Rich people didn't apologize to housekeepers. I'm calling my lawyer right now, Mr. Thompson continued. I'm filing for divorce. I'm also pursuing charges against Richard for corporate espionage. The police will probably want to talk to both of you about what happened here today. Grace's stomach dropped. The police. She'd hit someone. Even in self-defense, even with video proof, the police getting involved was never good for someone like her. Mr. Thompson seemed to read her mind. Grace, the video clearly shows self-defense. You have nothing to worry about legally. In fact, he paused, seeming to consider his words carefully. You may have saved my company. If you hadn't been here this morning, if that incident hadn't happened, I wouldn't have checked the security footage. I wouldn't have discovered the affair or the theft. Richard and Victoria were planning to steal technology worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Grace tried to process this. She just wanted to get through another workday. Now she was somehow in the middle of corporate espionage and a billionaire divorce. "I don't understand what this means for me, sir," Grace said honestly. Mr. Thompson leaned forward. "It means you're not fired. It means I'm giving you the rest of the week off, fully paid to recover from what happened. And it means," he paused again, "it means I'd like to discuss your future with this household. Things are going to change dramatically around here. I'm going to need people I can trust, people with integrity. You proved today that you're willing to stand up for yourself and tell the truth even when it's difficult." Mrs. Thompson laughed bitterly. "You've got to be kidding me. You're rewarding her for hitting me?" "No," Mr. Thompson said coldly. "I'm rewarding honesty and self-defense. You assaulted her first, Victoria. The cameras don't lie, even if you do." He turned back to Grace. "Think about it while you're off this week. We'll talk when you come back. For now, please go home. Get some rest. Take care of that arm." Grace nodded, still feeling like she was in a dream, or a nightmare. She wasn't sure which. She gathered her things slowly, her bandaged arm throbbing with pain. As she headed toward the door, Mrs. Thompson's voice followed her. "You think you've won something? You think this changes anything? You're still just a maid." Grace turned back. For the first time in 3 years, she looked Mrs. Thompson directly in the eye. "Maybe," Grace said quietly, "but I'm a maid who knows her worth, and that's something you can't take away from me." She walked out, leaving the broken glass and the broken marriage behind her. Grace didn't sleep that night. She sat on her small couch in her small apartment, staring at the bandage on her arm. Her phone kept buzzing with news alerts, but she ignored them. Her mind was racing too fast to focus on anything. What had she done? She'd slapped a billionaire's wife. Yes, it was self-defense. Yes, there was video proof. But Grace had lived long enough to know that justice didn't always work the same way for people like her. Around midnight, her daughter Lisa called. "Mom, I just saw something online. Tell me it's not you." Grace's heart stopped. "What did you see?" "There's a story trending about a housekeeper and some billionaire divorce. They're not using names yet, but Mom, they're talking about an incident at a Manhattan penthouse. Is that where you work?" Grace closed her eyes. Of course it was already online. Rich people's drama always made the news. "Lisa, I'm okay. Something happened at work, but I'm fine. I promise." "What happened? Are you in trouble?" Grace explained everything, her voice shaking. The glass, the cut, the slap, the cameras, the affair. All of it spilled out. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something Grace didn't expect. "Good." "What?" "Good that you defended yourself, Mom. I'm tired of hearing stories about you getting disrespected at work. I'm tired of you making yourself smaller so other people can feel bigger. I'm proud of you." Grace started crying. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words. They talked for another hour. Lisa made her promise to call if things got worse. After hanging up, Grace finally fell asleep on the couch, exhausted. The next morning, everything exploded. Grace woke up to 73 missed calls. Her phone was overheating from all the notifications. Confused and panicked, she opened her news app. The headline made her stomach drop. "Tech billionaire files for divorce after wife's affair and assault on staff." Her name wasn't mentioned, but details were. The Manhattan penthouse, the assault, the affair with the business partner, the corporate espionage. Somehow the story had leaked with enough specifics that people were connecting the dots. Then Grace made the mistake of checking social media. The comments were everywhere. Some people were supportive, calling her brave, but others were vicious. They called her a liar, a gold digger, a troublemaker. Some comments had racist undertones that made Grace feel sick. People were sharing her photo, which they'd somehow found from her daughter's social media. Her face was everywhere. "Home-wrecking maid seduces billionaire," one headline screamed. "Gold digger ruins marriage," said another. Grace couldn't understand how the story had gotten so twisted. She hadn't seduced anyone. She'd just defended herself. But facts didn't seem to matter online. Her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Grace, this is Attorney Jennifer Walsh. Mr. Thompson asked me to call you. Please don't hang up." Grace's hand tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" "I want to help you. The story that's circulating online is false. Mrs. Thompson's family has hired a very expensive public relations firm, and they're controlling the narrative. They're making you look like the villain to protect their daughter's reputation. Why are you calling me?" Because Mr. Thompson wants to make sure you're protected. He's willing to provide you with legal representation, free of charge. We can fight this false narrative, but I need your permission to speak on your behalf. Grace didn't trust this. Why would he do that? I'm just his housekeeper. You're a victim of assault who told the truth when it would have been easier to lie. Mr. Thompson takes that seriously. But Grace, I need to be honest with you. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Mrs. Thompson's family is powerful. They have connections to major media outlets. They're going to try to destroy your reputation to save theirs. Grace felt the walls closing in. I just want this to go away. I understand. But it won't go away on its own. You have two choices. Stay silent and let them control the story, or fight back with the truth. If you choose to fight, we have the security footage. We have documentation of your injury. We have a strong case. But it means going public, doing interviews, facing criticism. Grace thought about Lisa, about the life she'd built through years of hard work, about every time she'd swallowed her pride and stayed quiet. I need to think about it, Grace said. Of course. But Grace, think fast. They're moving quickly, and silence right now looks like guilt. The lawyer gave her a number to call and hung up. For the next 3 days, Grace stayed in her apartment. She was too afraid to go outside. Reporters had somehow found her address and were waiting on her street. Her neighbors were talking. Some were supportive, bringing her food and offering help. Others looked at her with suspicion and judgment. On the 4th day, Mr. Thompson called her directly. Grace, I'm sorry. I never wanted this to happen to you. It's not your fault, sir. Yes, it is. I should have handled Victoria years ago. I knew how she treated people, and I looked the other way because it was easier than dealing with it. Now you're paying the price for my cowardice. Grace didn't know what to say. Have you spoken to Jennifer? He asked. Yes. She said you offered to help me legally. I did. But Grace, I want to be clear about something. This isn't charity. This isn't me trying to ease my guilt. You saved my company. If you hadn't been there that morning, if that incident hadn't happened, I wouldn't have checked the security footage. Richard and Victoria were days away from stealing technology worth hundreds of millions. You stopped that even if you didn't know you were doing it. I didn't do anything, sir. I was just trying to survive the day. Exactly. And that's what makes you valuable. You're honest. You're reliable. You have integrity. Those qualities are rare, Grace, especially in my world. He paused, and Grace could hear him taking a breath. I have a proposal for you. When this mess settles, and it will settle, I'd like to offer you a new position, not as a housekeeper, but as my household manager. You'd oversee all the staff across my properties. You'd make sure everyone is treated fairly and paid properly. You'd have real authority and real respect. Grace almost laughed. Sir, I clean houses. I don't manage anything. You raised a daughter on your own while working multiple jobs. You've managed difficult employers for 20 years. You've managed to keep your dignity in situations where others would have broken. Don't tell me you can't manage a household staff. Why would you trust me with something like that? Because you slapped my wife when she tried to hit you. Most people in your position would have just taken it, afraid of losing their job. You stood up for yourself. That tells me you have a backbone. That's exactly what I need. Grace's head was spinning. A week ago, she was worried about getting fired. Now she was being offered a promotion she never imagined. Think about it, Mr. Thompson said. But first, we need to handle this media situation. Jennifer is excellent at her job. She can help you, but only if you let her. After the call ended, Grace sat in silence for a long time. Outside her window, she could see reporters still waiting. Her phone kept buzzing with messages, some supportive, many hateful. She thought about Lisa's words. I'm proud of you. She thought about 20 years of staying quiet. She thought about the scar on her arm that would never fully fade. Then she picked up her phone and called the lawyer back. Jennifer, this is Grace. I want to fight back. Tell me what I need to do. On the other end of the line, the lawyer's voice was calm and confident. Good, let's tell your story the right way. But I need to warn you, Grace. When you speak up, when you tell the truth, people are going to come after you harder. Are you ready for that? Grace looked at her reflection in the dark window. A tired woman, a scared woman, but also a woman who'd had enough. I've been ready my whole life, Grace said. I just didn't know it until now. The television studio was colder than Grace expected. Bright lights pointed at a chair where she'd be sitting in 10 minutes. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Jennifer, the lawyer, stood beside her with a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Remember, just tell the truth. Don't let them twist your words. If you need a moment, take it. You're in control here. Grace nodded, but she didn't feel in control at all. In control, people didn't have panic attacks in television studio bathrooms. In control, people didn't throw up twice before an interview. The host of the show was a woman named Patricia Wells, known for tough but fair interviews. She'd reached out personally after hearing Grace's story. The public needs to hear from you directly, Patricia had said on the phone. Not through lawyers or press releases. From you. Now, sitting across from Patricia under those hot lights, Grace felt exposed. Millions of people would watch this. Her daughter would watch this. Everyone from her old neighborhood would watch this. Patricia smiled warmly. Grace, thank you for being here. I know this hasn't been easy. No, ma'am, it hasn't. Let's start from the beginning. You worked for the Thompson family for 3 years. What was that like? Grace took a breath. Most days it was fine. I cleaned, I organized, I did my job. Mr. Thompson was barely home, always working. Mrs. Thompson was... Grace paused, choosing her words carefully. She was demanding. Particular about things. Were you treated well? Grace thought about all the times she'd wanted to quit. All the insults she'd swallowed. I was paid well. That's not the same as being treated well. Patricia leaned forward. Can you tell us what happened that day? The day everything changed? Grace told the story. Every detail. The wine glass. The cut on her arm. Mrs. Thompson raising her hand. The slap. She showed the scar on her arm to the camera. It was still pink and raised, impossible to hide. I didn't plan to hit her, Grace said, her voice cracking. I've worked for difficult people my whole life. I've been yelled at, insulted, treated like I'm invisible. I always just took it because I needed the job. But when she threw that glass, when she tried to hit me, something broke inside me. I just couldn't take it anymore. Some people are saying you're a gold digger, that you're trying to get money from Mr. Thompson. What do you say to that? Grace felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. I'm a single mother who's worked 3 jobs to put my daughter through college. I've never asked Mr. Thompson for anything except my paycheck that I earned. I didn't break up their marriage. Mrs. Thompson did that herself with her choices. You're aware that the Thompson family has hired publicists who are painting a very different picture of you? Yes, ma'am. They're saying I'm a liar and a troublemaker. They're trying to make me look like the villain so people forget what really happened. Patricia pulled out a tablet. We've obtained the security footage from that day. Mr. Thompson's legal team provided it to us. Grace, are you comfortable with us showing this to our viewers? Grace's stomach twisted. Seeing herself on that screen, vulnerable and bleeding, would be humiliating, but it was also proof. Yes, show it. The footage played on screens throughout the studio. Grace couldn't watch. She stared at her hands while the audience gasped at what they saw. The thrown glass. The blood, Mrs. Thompson advancing. Grace's defensive slap. When it finished, Patricia turned back to her. That's pretty clear evidence of self-defense. It is what it is, Grace said simply. The truth is the truth. What do you want people to know, Grace? Why did you agree to do this interview? Grace looked directly at the camera. This was her moment. Her chance to say what she'd been thinking for days. I want people to know that domestic workers are human beings. We're not invisible. We're not punching bags for rich people to take their frustrations out on. We have families. We have dignity. We deserve respect, no matter how much money we make or what job we do. Her voice got stronger as she continued. I stayed quiet for 20 years because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my job. Afraid I wouldn't be believed. Afraid that speaking up would make things worse. And maybe I'm crazy for speaking up now, but I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of watching people like me get treated badly and just accepting it, because that's how things are. Patricia nodded slowly. What's next for you? I don't know, Grace admitted. But whatever happens, I'm not going to be silent anymore. Not about this. Not about anything. The interview aired that night. Grace watched it at home with Lisa, who'd driven down from college to be with her. They sat close together on the couch, holding hands. Within an hour, social media exploded. But this time, it was different. Thousands of people, mostly women, mostly workers in service industries, started sharing their own stories. Housekeepers, nannies, waitresses, retail workers. They talked about being yelled at, disrespected, touched inappropriately, treated like they didn't matter. A hashtag started trending. I am Grace. People posted photos of themselves holding signs with the words. They shared stories of standing up to abusive bosses and difficult customers. Grace's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages of support poured in. A woman who'd worked as a nanny for 15 years wrote, "Thank you for saying what we've all been thinking." A hotel housekeeper shared, "I cried watching your interview. You're so brave." But the negative comments didn't stop either. Mrs. Thompson's supporters doubled down. They called Grace opportunistic. They questioned her motives. They picked apart every word she'd said, looking for inconsistencies that weren't there. 2 days after the interview, something unexpected happened. Former employees of the Thompson household started coming forward. A nanny who'd worked there 5 years ago. A chef who'd been fired after 1 week. A driver who'd quit without notice. They all had similar stories. Mrs. Thompson's cruelty. Her drinking. Her explosive temper. One woman showed text messages where Mrs. Thompson had called her horrible names. Another had photos of bruises from when Mrs. Thompson had thrown a phone at her. Jennifer called Grace with an update. "It's working. Public opinion is shifting. Mrs. Thompson's family is panicking. They're trying to settle quietly now." Settle what? Everything. The divorce. The corporate espionage case. They want this to go away before more people come forward. Mr. Thompson's lawyers are negotiating terms. Grace felt strange about this. Part of her wanted Mrs. Thompson to face real consequences. But another part just wanted peace. "What about me?" Grace asked. "What happens to me? You? Grace, you're becoming a movement. 3 different news outlets want to interview you. A publisher called about a book deal. There's even talk of a documentary." Grace laughed, but it sounded hollow. "I don't want to be a movement. I just want my life back." "I understand. But Grace, your life isn't going back to how it was. You can't unring this bell. The question is, what do you want to do next?" That night, Grace sat on her small balcony, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there in one of those tall buildings was the penthouse where everything had changed, where a desperate moment of self-defense had turned her entire world upside down. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lisa. "Mom, look at this. It was a video." Lisa had posted something on social media, speaking directly to the camera. "Hi, I'm Lisa. Grace is my mom. I want to tell you about the woman you've been seeing on the news. My mom raised me alone after my dad left. She worked 3 jobs so I could have food and clothes and school supplies. She missed her own meals so I wouldn't go hungry. She studied with me every night even though she was exhausted." Lisa's voice got emotional. "My mom taught me that hard work matters, that dignity matters, that standing up for yourself matters even when it's scary. Especially when it's scary. Some people are calling her a gold digger or a liar, but I'm calling her what she is, my hero. She defended herself after years of swallowing her pride. That doesn't make her greedy. That makes her human." The video ended with Lisa holding up a sign. "I am Grace. We are all Grace." Grace watched it 3 times, tears running down her face. Then she checked the comments. Thousands of them, mostly positive, mostly supportive. She saw mothers sharing stories about sacrificing for their children. She saw workers talking about finally feeling seen. She saw young women saying Grace had inspired them to speak up about their own situations. Grace realized something then. She hadn't just defended herself that day in the kitchen. She'd accidentally given a voice to millions of people who felt invisible. Her phone rang. It was Mr. Thompson. "Grace, have you seen what's happening online?" "Yes, sir. My lawyers tell me the settlement is almost finalized. Victoria is agreeing to a quiet divorce with a non-disclosure agreement. She won't say anything else publicly about what happened. That's good, I guess. Grace, I meant what I said before. When this is over, I want you to come back. Not as a housekeeper. As someone who helps me build something better. A household where people are treated with respect. Where what happened to you never happens again." Grace looked out at the city lights, at all those buildings full of people. Some of them were probably domestic workers too, cleaning offices right now invisible to everyone around them. "I'll think about it, sir. I promise I will. But first I need to figure out who I am after all this. I'm not the same person I was 2 weeks ago." "No," Mr. Thompson agreed. "You're not. You're someone who stood up when it mattered." That purse 18 months later, Grace stood in front of a mirror in an office she still couldn't believe was hers. The view from the window showed Central Park, the trees changing color with the autumn season. Her name was on the door, Grace Thompson, Director of Staff Operations. It still felt surreal. The past year and a half had been a whirlwind. After the interview, after the settlement, after everything died down, Grace had taken Mr. Thompson up on his offer. Not right away. She'd taken 3 months to think about it, to figure out what she really wanted. During those months, she'd done more interviews. She'd spoken at workers' rights conferences. She'd shared her story with people who needed to hear it. And slowly, she'd realized something important. She didn't just want a better job for herself. She wanted better conditions for everyone like her. So when she accepted Mr. Thompson's offer, she came with conditions of her own. Fair wages for all staff, proper health insurance, respect policies with real consequences. Mr. Thompson had agreed to everything. Now she managed a team of 20 people across 3 properties. She made sure they were treated well, paid fairly, and heard when they had concerns. It was hard work, but it was meaningful work. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lisa. "Mom, the article just published. Check your email." Grace opened her laptop. There it was. A major magazine had done a feature story. 1 year later, how a moment of self-defense sparked a movement. The article talked about the changes in domestic worker rights that had happened since her story went viral. Several states had passed new protections for household employees. Companies were being held accountable for how they treated service workers. It wasn't everything, but it was progress. There was a knock on her office door. Grace looked up to see Mr. Thompson standing there with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing her one. "Big day." "Thank you, sir." "Grace, we've been working together for over a year now." "You can call me by my first name," Grace smiled. Old habits were hard to break. "I'll try." He sat down across from her desk. Their relationship had evolved into something Grace never expected. Not romance, despite what some gossip websites claimed, but genuine friendship and mutual respect. He valued her opinion on things far beyond household management. She'd helped him rebuild his company's culture, advised on hiring practices, even sat in on board meetings about employee relations. "I got a call this morning," Mr. Thompson said, "from Victoria." Grace's hand tightened on her coffee cup. She hadn't heard that name in months. She's been in Europe, getting help apparently. Therapy, rehabilitation, all of it. "She wanted me to give you something." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Grace stared at it like it might bite her. "What is it?" "A letter." "I didn't read it. She asked me to deliver it personally." Grace took the envelope with hesitant hands. After Mr. Thompson left, she sat alone in her office for a long time before opening it. The handwriting was neat, careful, different from the woman Grace remembered. "Grace, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. I was drowning in my own unhappiness, and I took it out on everyone around me, especially people who couldn't fight back. That makes me a coward and a bully. Watching what happened after that day, seeing how your courage inspired so many people, made me face some hard truths about myself. I was cruel because I felt powerless in my own life. I had everything money could buy, but I was miserable, and I made that everyone else's problem. You deserved better. Everyone who worked for me deserved better. I'm working on becoming better, though I know that doesn't undo the harm I caused. I heard you're doing incredible things now. I'm glad. You always had more strength than I ever did. I hope you build the life you deserve." Grace read it twice. She felt complicated things. Anger was still there, buried but present. But also something like closure. She folded the letter and put it in her drawer. Maybe someday she'd respond. Maybe not. Either way was okay. Her phone rang. It was Jennifer, the lawyer who'd become a friend. "Grace, turn on Channel 7. Now." Grace grabbed the remote and switched on the TV mounted on her office wall. There was Lisa, her daughter, standing at a podium with microphones pointed at her. "We're announcing the launch of the Fair Treatment Foundation," Lisa was saying, "a nonprofit dedicated to protecting the rights of domestic workers across the country. We'll provide legal resources, education about worker rights, and support for people facing mistreatment in their workplaces." Grace's eyes filled with tears. Lisa had graduated last year and had been working on this project in secret for months. "This foundation exists because of my mother," Lisa continued. "She taught me that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. And now we're going to help others do the same." The camera flashed to supportive faces in the crowd. Grace recognized some of them. Former household workers who'd shared their stories, advocates who'd been fighting for these rights for years. people who'd been inspired by what happened that day in the kitchen. Grace's office phone rang. Then her cell phone. Then her email started flooding with messages. People wanted to donate to Lisa's foundation. Others wanted to share their stories. Some just wanted to say thank you. That evening, Grace stood on the balcony of her new apartment. It was small but nice in a safe neighborhood with good schools nearby. She'd been able to afford it with her new salary. Lisa was coming over for dinner to celebrate the foundation launch. Grace thought about the woman she'd been 18 months ago, scared, silent, willing to accept disrespect because she needed the money. That woman felt like a stranger now. The slap heard around the world, some articles had called it. Grace didn't think of it that way. It was just a moment when she'd finally had enough. A moment when survival instinct overrode years of training herself to be small. But that moment had rippled outward in ways she never imagined. It had sparked conversations about power and dignity and respect. It had inspired people to share their own stories. It had led to real change in laws and policies. Grace didn't feel like a hero. Heroes were people who planned to do brave things. She'd just been trying to get through another day. But maybe that was the point. Maybe everyday people doing everyday things could create extraordinary change when they refused to stay silent anymore. Her doorbell rang. Lisa stood there with bags of groceries and a huge smile. "Mom, can you believe it? We raised $50,000 in the first 3 hours." They hugged tight. Grace breathed in the moment. Her daughter, successful and passionate about making the world better. Their relationship stronger than ever. A future that looked nothing like the past. Over dinner, Lisa talked excitedly about the foundation's plans. Legal clinics, educational programs, a hotline for workers facing abuse. Grace listened, proud beyond words. "You know what the best part is?" Lisa said. "All these people reaching out saying your story gave them courage. That because of you, they quit toxic jobs or reported abuse or finally stood up for themselves. You changed lives, Mom." Grace shook her head. "I just did what I had to do." "Exactly. And that's what makes it powerful. You weren't trying to be inspiring. You were just trying to survive with your dignity intact. That's something everyone can relate to." Later that night, after Lisa left, Grace sat on her couch with a cup of tea. She thought about Mrs. Thompson's letter, about forgiveness and growth, about how people could change when they faced their own darkness. She thought about Mr. Thompson and how one moment of actually paying attention had saved his company and maybe his soul, too. She thought about all the workers who'd reached out to her, the ones who said "me too" before it was a hashtag, the ones who'd suffered in silence for years because they thought that was just how things were. And she thought about that Tuesday afternoon in a kitchen, when a glass shattered and everything changed. Grace picked up her phone and opened her notes app. She'd been asked to give a speech next month at a workers' rights convention. She started typing. "My name is Grace, and I'm a domestic worker. For 20 years, I cleaned houses, raised other people's children, and made myself invisible to keep my job. Then one day, I couldn't be invisible anymore." The words flowed easily now. Her story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd ever felt powerless and found the strength to stand up anyway. Grace smiled as she wrote. The scar on her arm had faded but never disappeared. She was glad for that. It reminded her of where she'd been and how far she'd come. It reminded her that surviving wasn't enough anymore. She deserved to thrive. They all did. And finally, after 43 years on this earth, Grace was learning how to do exactly that. She was learning that her voice mattered. That her dignity wasn't negotiable. That being just a maid didn't mean being less than anyone else. The world still had a long way to go. There were still workers being mistreated, still voices being silenced, still people too afraid to defend themselves. But things were changing. Slowly, painfully, imperfectly, but changing nonetheless. And it had started with one woman, one moment, one slap that said, "Enough." Grace saved her document and closed her laptop. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More work to do, more stories to hear, more people to help, but tonight she was at peace. She'd found something that day in the kitchen when she defended herself. Not just courage or strength or power. She'd found herself. And that, Grace realized, was worth more than any paycheck, any job, any approval from people who'd never seen her as fully human anyway. She was Grace. She was a mother, A worker, a survivor, a voice for the voiceless. She was enough. She'd always been enough. It just took a lifetime to believe it. On deserves to decide her own future. After hanging up, Grace sat in the quiet. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More interviews, more comments, more people watching her every move. But tonight she was just Grace. A mother. A survivor. A woman who'd found her voice after years of silence, and that was enough.